This record-breaking Canadian cold blast is now surging into the United States. This video will provide the final update on that dynamic setup moving in. That includes a look at how much snow you could get as it cools down. We've made it to the weekend, and that means the cool down I've been discussing in my previous updates is set to come into fruition. This graphic shows the upper level temperatures as you go about 10,000 feet into the atmosphere, and although I haven't showed it in my previous updates, I think this does one of the best jobs of showing just how cold the air really is going to be in the sky, and why that's going to result in it being so cold at the surface. Look at this. Just about 5 to 10,000 feet above your head, it is going to be in the range of -5 to even -25 to -30 Celsius. As we go into our Monday, November 10th, that's going to include zones from the Central Plains all the way over to the East Coast and in points in between. Look at the roots of this cold blast, all the way up through Central and Eastern Canada and then diving straight on down into the Eastern US. This is why the cool air is going to be so record-breaking. I'll save the in-depth temperature discussion for the end of the video, but just as a snapshot of what I'll be discussing, here's a look at the high temperatures versus normal for Monday, November 10th. The normal on November 10th is 48 for Madison, Wisconsin, but it should be around 37. From Indianapolis to Huntsville, Alabama, it will only be in the 30s to the low 40s for highs on Monday. The normal would be in the 50s or even the 60s. Tallahassee, Charlotte, and Philly will also be at least around 10 to 15 degrees below the normal in terms of temperatures. A deeper dive into the temperature forecast is just a few minutes away. First, though, I do want to go through the final rundown and timeline of the wintry storm system that is going to be on the leading edge of all of these changes. As we go out of our Saturday when I'm recording this and into our Saturday night, that is when rain and snow that's been in parts of the Midwest will continue to push east with a low-pressure system. As this low-pressure system continues to usher in some of that cooler air, there is going to be rain transitioning over to snow around it and just behind it, moving into the lower Great Lakes region tonight. The latest guidance continues to show the best chance of some accumulating snow being in Michigan and the northern parts of Indiana and Ohio as early as our Sunday morning. Around that same time is when the low pressure pushing east along the leading edge of the jet stream dip should mean some rain showers and possibly even some scattered storms moving up into some parts of the East Coast region. Those zones will likely continue to get in on some rainfall that could even be heavy at times as we go through the afternoon and evening hours, particularly up into the southern New England states, places like Boston, Hartford, Connecticut. That's where there will be some heavier downpours pulling on through as we go even into the late afternoon and evening. As you go into the interior Northeast, that's where the forecast has been pretty complicated with this system. It does look like warmer air will initially win out more than expected in my previous videos. That means that it will be more of a mix of rain and snow, or possibly just completely rain to start out this event until the sun goes down. Once we go beyond around 7 p.m. on Sunday, though, that's when any precipitation still ongoing should begin to transition over to some snowfall. That is likely to happen because when you get that westerly wind coming in behind a system like this, there's going to be that lake effect, and that's especially going to come in into the western part of New York and PA, for example, as well as sinking on down out of the lower Great Lakes region and all the way down to the southern Appalachians. In fact, there's going to be the chance for snow showers and flurries not only in the zones I just listed, but even a little bit further east as we go out of Monday and into Monday night and early Tuesday. Look at this. The GFS model shows a slight chance of some of that snowfall coverage getting all the way to the Virginia or North Carolina coast in that colder pocket by Tuesday morning. It wouldn't accumulate there, but it's certainly something that could, excite some people. With that final timeline in mind, let's take a look at the finalized snowfall totals I'm expecting as we go through the next few days. This guidance does a good job of showing how much snow will likely fall and could possibly accumulate. It doesn't factor in the fact that the ground may still be warm given that we are in mid-fall though, so keep in mind, not all of this might stick. By the time we get through Tuesday morning, there's going to be a decent swath of snow that will have come down in parts of the lower Great Lakes region and into the interior Northeast regardless though. Many spots will have gotten enough snow to add up to 2 to 6 inches. I wouldn't even rule out an isolated spot there in northern Indiana off of the lower part of Lake Michigan, where upwards of 6 inches of snow could come down. It's just a question as to whether or not this will accumulate. That's what's really up in the air. Further south and east, flurries and snow showers could add up through eastern Kentucky and eastern Tennessee, all the way over towards parts of Virginia, for example, especially in the mountains in between with the Appalachians there. That's where upwards of 2 to 3 inches could come down and possibly even accumulate in those higher peaks. Before I transition out of this discussion and into the temperature discussion, here's a reminder that the maps I use in my videos are from Weatherbell, and you should check out Weatherbell for yourself. There's a free trial link to Weatherbell and their subscription down in the description of this video. feel free to check that out after watching. Now let's jump into the final temperature discussion I'm going to give in regards to this Arctic blast. Starting with a look at the forecasted temperatures into Sunday, November 9th, it's worth noting that it's already going to be cold in the morning, where the jet stream will be diving down into parts of the central U.S. From parts of Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado, through the north central plains and over to the upper Midwest, lows will be in the teens and 20s, and it will be a very frigid start to Sunday. And trust me, it won't warm up much into Sunday afternoon. While it will still be warm out ahead of the general frontal boundary that's going to be occurring at the surface with 60s and 70s as you go towards the Gulf and southeast coast of the U.S., back behind that front, that's where it will be downright frigid, cascading off the Front Range region and then coming down into the Central Plains, moving out of parts of the upper Midwest and down into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Highs will only be in the 20s to the low to mid-30s. That is well below the normal for this time of the year. Into Monday, that is when the cold will be more intense and expand eastward. It's worth noting that versus my last video, some of these numbers have actually gone down a bit for the forecast. In fact, we're looking at single digits to very low teens now in the forecast for the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, and western Minnesota for our Monday morning. Further southeast from there, down into the south central plains, the Mississippi Valley, all the way over to the southern Appalachians, points in between. Looking at 20s for Monday morning lows, and then look at Monday's highs. This is where record-breaking conditions are really going to set in. You can see in parts of the central and southern Appalachians region, all the way down to the Gulf Coast, there's going to be this expanse of highs in the 30s and the low to mid-40s. All of those circles on this graphic indicate record cold high temperatures. That means the peak temperature of the day on November 10th, since records have been kept, has never been this cold. Even in December, highs aren't usually in the 40s in parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. It would be below average even at that point, so it's definitely well below average for early November. As we go out of Monday into our early Tuesday, look at these morning lows, especially east of the Mississippi Valley region. We're going to have lows crashing down to the 20s all the way down into the southeast U.S., parts of Florida where you can't even read the numbers because of all of those record low boxes there. You'll be waking up to frost and freeze conditions. You need to prepare properly, especially in the eastern U.S. for these next few days. People, pipes, and pets. I always want to give that reminder. Those are the things you want to be thinking about when it gets this cold outside. Even if you don't think it's cold, it can still be dangerous to certain aspects of your life. Again, people, pipes, and pets, that's what you got to be thinking about. I will note, by the time we get into Tuesday, it will still be cold with 30s and 40s up and down parts of the East Coast. We'll have record cold highs with 50s and 60s in Florida. Back west of there, though, things will be starting to warm up, and I think that's going to be a trend that starts to pick up as we go through next week. That's all I've got for this final update video, though. Here's the headlines recap of everything I just discussed. Of course, again, a big dip in the jet stream, and that big dip in the temperatures in the atmosphere means record-breaking changes in temperatures are going to get ushered in at the surface in the U.S. Millions of people will get their first snow, not necessarily accumulation, but at least first snow flakes as the changes arrive. Flurries could even stretch as far south as parts of North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. A widespread freeze will kick off next week before the weather pattern eventually turns milder. That's all I got for you in this update. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications if you have not already. That will help you stay tuned and get notified when I do post my future updates. That's all I got, though, sure enough. God bless you. Thank you so much for watching.
One Nation Web.